For better or for worse, over World of Warcraft's 20-year lifespan, there have been some players or moments that have stood out from the rest. From loot drama, to angry raid leaders, exploiters, to selling sexual favors for flying mount training, the legacy they've left behind is as legendary as the game itself. In celebration of the upcoming 20-year anniversary, I've recompiled the series that highlights some of the players who have helped shape one of the most interesting legacies in video game history. These are the most famous and infamous players of World of Warcraft. Have you ever heard the tale of Gedon the Dwarf? Out of sheer boredom, one day he went exploring in the Deep Run tram that connects Stormwind to Ironforge, and he came upon an interesting scene. You see, Gedon was on a role-playing realm, and he came upon two night elves in the middle of a very special roleplay, Enotep and Artemisa. Hey, nothing says romance like a dark, dank corner of a public transit station. Enotep settles for nothing less than the top high-class venues to engage in cyberdiddling. The hairy dwarf skulked the shadows, assessing the situation from afar, and seizing the moment, he decided to join in. He emerged from the shadows and interjected himself into their intimate role-playing experience. He tried his best, but for some reason he was rejected. Enotep didn't roll that way, apparently, so Gedon quickly retreated into the shadows to watch a safe distance from Enotep's roaming fingers. But alas, the moment had passed, and before Gedon could even whip out his dwarven hand cannon, Artemisa took her leave. In fact, she walked on foot all the way to Ironforge, which is hardcore. Uber didn't exist back then, apparently. And Enotep, not too pleased with this turn of events, prepared to leave as well, but not without a choice of words to the dirty dwarf. No one stands in the way of a night elf and his cybering. He re-equipped his clothing and verbally bombasted Gedon for dropping in uninvited, and feeling remorse for ruining the moment, he offered an apology, but it wasn't taken. He had done quite enough, and Enotep walked off into the sunset, never to be seen again. Karmerr the Paladin. Back in vanilla, there was a talent called Reckoning, which would give the Paladin an extra attack on their next attack upon being critically hit, stacking infinitely. A paladin by the name of Karmerr saw the potential in this, and using the dueling mechanic, he stacked Reckoning to an absurd amount to become a weapon of mass destruction. He did this right next to the outdoor raid boss, Kazik, and when he was ready, he charged in and insta-gibbed him. A video of this event was released, and paladins worldwide started emulating it, using it to one-shot people in PvP, kill Kazik themselves, and so on, and it was quickly hotfixed to only store 5 charges max before more damage could be done, but not before Karmerr cemented himself into paladin legend. Drama over loot has never been in short order in the game, but for this particular guild, it had reached a boiling point in the Burning Crusade expansion. Analogkid was a rogue in the Vicarious guild of the Area 52 server. From the Sunwell Plateau raid, the final boss, Kil'jaeden, dropped this legendary bow, Thoradal the Star's Fury. This was the first legendary item meant for hunters, aside from Thunder Fury, of course, and it was perfect. It had a slow speed, amazing stats, and most of all, it had its own ammo. This was back when hunters needed to buy ammo for their bows and guns, and it was the item that every hunter wanted at the time. It happened to drop for the Vicarious guild, and one of 2 hunters would be the lucky recipients, or so they thought. Citing that Analogkid was more loyal to the guild, it was given to him to use as a stat stick over the 2 hunters in the raid. This was also back when rogues had a ranged weapons slot, and hunters had melee weapon slots. They could equip both, but obviously ranged wasn't the rogue's primary, and it was just used for extra stats. Word of this quickly spread, and the whole guild and Analogkid became the subject of ridicule and anger, and it's quite ironic that the ongoing joke of the game was that everything was a hunter weapon, but for this day, it happened to be that this legendary bow was a rogue weapon. But next, let's go over the computer programming weapon, boot.dev. Have you ever been stuck in the middle of learning a new programming language and felt like you hit a wall? Welcome to boot.dev, the smartest way to master backend development while keeping things exciting. Boot.dev helps you learn Python and Go in a way that feels more like a game than World of Warcraft has felt in the past 10 years. Told you so, by the way. It holds a bunch of RPG elements. You earn XP, complete quests, and even level up as you code. You learn hands-on right from the start. Instead of just reading about code, you'll actually be writing it, which I found to be personally useful. And they also balance theory with practice, giving you actual useful knowledge and skills to prepare you for interviews and get you ready to tackle real-world coding problems, such as perhaps maybe an algorithm that subtly manipulates your players into buying microtransactions via stilted matchmaking. Or a sorting algorithm or something, I don't know. One of the two. If you ever get stuck, they have a Discord community to help you out, as well as an AI wizard named Boots to guide you through any questions that you may have. Backend developers in the US earned a median salary of over $100,000 last year, which without taxes, that's 5,000 WoW tokens because, let's face it, although we don't have time to play video games anymore, that of course won't stop us from paying money to not play them because we are hopelessly addicted. If you're ready to start coding, click the link in the description below and use my code MADSEASONSHOW to get 25% off your first month or even your entire first year if you go with the annual plan. Next up on our list, we have Indalamar the Warrior of the Guild Nerfed. And when I say the warrior, I mean the warrior. Back in the game's infancy during the beta, no one really knew how to play it, and everybody, quote, knew that warriors were the worst class in the game. They killed things much too slowly, and they were constantly calling for buffs on the forums and whatnot, and everyone believed them to be underpowered, except for one person. He called out against these cries for buffs and said that warriors weren't even underpowered, but rather they were overpowered if you actually knew what you were doing. No one believed him, so he put his money where his mouth was, and he made a video showing them how it's done. He showcased a 3-minute steamrolling through high-level mobs, often killing them in just 2 hits, which was unheard of those days. Back then, the Bloodthirst ability worked much like Victory Rush, where it triggered off of kills, so he just chain-killed an entire compound without having to stop once to heal. He was right. Warriors were overpowered. In a storm of people saying that they were weak, he showed that with proper itemization and talents, they were wrecking balls. Shortly after the video was released, they were hit with a nerf bat, and everybody subsequently pointed their fingers at Indalamar as the cause. He was just a little too good, and the class suffered because of it. And he was so good, in fact, that Blizzard hired him as an itemization developer, and he's had a few items named after him. There's Ramaladni's Blade of Culling, which is just his name spelled backwards. And also in Diablo 3 you have Ramaladni's Gift, which gives a socket to any legendary. And he also got his own card in World of Warcraft's trading card game. He continued to work for Blizzard until, sadly, he passed away in 2022. Time is money, so it stands to reason that at a certain point, a World of Warcraft account starts to accrue significant value. Next up, we have what is possibly the most infamous instance of a World of Warcraft account being sold. Zeuzo was a rogue in the Method Guild back during the Burn Crusade expansion, and at the time, he gained the reputation of being the most geared. He had the server-first Warglaves of Azeroth, and most of the Tier 6 set, and he was a very hardcore raider with the gear to back it up. One day, somebody with a lot of money started whispering him, offering him real-life money in exchange for his account, and he initially refused the stranger's offer, but he persisted, offering more and more as time went on, eventually reaching 7,000 euros, which was nearly 10,000 US dollars at the time. As it turned out, something happened with Zeuzo in his personal life, and he found himself strapped for cash, so he finally accepted the stranger's offer, and he sold him his glaive rogue for 7,000 euros. The buyer renamed the rogue to Shax, and got to play for all of 5 days before he was banned by Blizzard. And the reason for that is because glaive rogues were very rare back then, so it was pretty obvious what happened. You had Zeuzo, a very high-profile character due to his gear, suddenly disappearing, and this new rogue with the exact same gear as him appeared in its place. It also didn't help that the Shax character was spectacularly bad at his class since he never played it before, which was kind of hilarious to people considering how geared he was. so they quickly pieced together what went down, and the details of the trade were leaked and word spread, and Blizzard quickly caught wind of it, investigated, and dropped a 7,000 euro ban hammer. It was such a big event that it was even covered by the BBC, although due to legal reasons everybody chose to remain anonymous, and in a fit of rage, Shaxx was planning on suing both Zeuzo and Blizzard, but nothing ever came of it.
I'm coming up with 32.33, repeating of course, percentage of survival.
Well, it's a lot better than we usually do.
Alright, chums up.
Ready, guys?
Let's do this. Leeroy Jenkins!
Oh my god, he just ran in.
Everyone knows Leeroy, being the subject of one of the very first viral videos for World of Warcraft. He was a paladin in the Pals for Life guild. They were running the Upper Blackrock Spire raid, and they were coming up with the plan of attack for the next room, and while they were constructing a strategy, Leeroy came back from AFK, and with the battle cry, he abruptly charged into the room, guns blazing, or swords blazing I guess, and he pulled the entire room of enemies, and the raid was overwhelmed and eventually died. Though this was ultimately staged, it quickly spread across the internet and it gave birth to the Leeroy term, which is ascribed to reckless or stupid behavior in-game. It became so popular, in fact, that it was even referenced by the game show Jeopardy, although none of these filthy casual normies knew the answer, which is just honestly pathetic.
And that would be the world of Warcraft.
Blizzard also saw fit to acknowledge him in-game through many different ways. They released an achievement to enter the same room that he did and kill 50 whelps, which awarded the Jenkins title in-game. And in the Warlords of Draenor expansion, there was an event where you could resurrect an NPC named Leeroy Jenkins, who, after a short amount of time, would rush to the end of the dungeon. If you're able to clear it before he Leeroyed, you got an achievement, and you even got him as a follower for your garrison. Truly one of the most famous players in the game. Stepping outside of the game for a moment, next up we have Tseric. The story of Tseric isn't necessarily based around a player, but rather a community manager. The World of Warcraft forums have always been a pretty unfriendly place, but it was particularly bad during the early days where there was less moderation and tools for reporting people. Trolling and flame wars were rampant, and community managers, or CMs, were often the target for players' frustration and rage. Nowadays, for the most part, abusive posters are silently banned, but back during the game's infancy, the CMs were a little bit more interactive, with Tseric probably being the most outspoken. Having been a CM for a few years already, he was starting to show visible signs of weariness, having to deal with the forum's more unscrupulous users. Instead of simply removing posts, he would enter debates and arguments with these trolls. Some cheered him on and saw him as a crusader of sorts fending off the dregs. Some thought it was unprofessional, others just found it funny watching him get wound up, and it all boiled over one day when he replied to a thread created by somebody wanting to know how to report a CM for inappropriate behavior. He gave the avenue to do just that, and jokingly wished the poster good luck in reporting him. Another user replied, asking if he was depressed, and egging him on, to which he replied that the poster was cowardly because they hide behind the anonymity of the internet, stating that he's the one who, quote, steps up. The exchange continued, and Tseric vented the frustrations of his job as a CM in the form of poetry. Can't help it. Posting impassionately, they say you don't care. Posting nothing, they say you ignore. Posting with passion, you incite trolls. Posting fluff, you say nonsense. Post with what facts you have, they whittle down with rationale. There is no win. There is only slow degradation. Take note, it is the first and only time you'll see someone in my position make that position. You can be me when I'm gone. The response was mixed. In typical fashion, some people sided with him against the trolls, and others condemned his lack of professionalism, and some were just curious to what the heck was going on. He ended up making another post venting further about the troubles he faces with his job and how he has to deal with people constantly goading him and deriding him and so on. And after a little back and forth, he dropped the mic with the following quote shortly before deleting the thread entirely. "Understand that this moment will be fleeting and that there is a hard crash of self-esteem to follow. You'll try to feed it again and fill the void, but it'll never be enough. You've backpedaled into the troll excuse. You have no point. You have no meaning. You have no significance. You will be forgotten. Godspeed." He made just one final post in response to another troll thread created by that day's drama, titled "Killing a Tseric should aggro every Tseric in a 40-yard radius. It makes sense. You're actually killing their best friend." In a final post, he replied with this. A few days later, Blizzard announced that he had left the company, and it's still a point debated to this day whether or not he was fired or he quit. The following year, another CM, Drisk, was asked about his fate, to which he responded, "If I answer, you might ask the same thing of me tomorrow." On a lighter note, next up we have the Warlock legend, Karmerr, a level 11 Warlock who made quite the puzzling post on the forums. The discussion focused around Warlocks and their use of staves, containing a 4-step process. 1. Post message in the room. 2. Look it over. 3. Don't report anything, I might get in trouble, smiley face. And 4. Have fun. Karmerr himself failed to post any information about his staff, other than the fact that it was a good one, and he alluded that he would somehow get in trouble if people were to report him. Players were left mystified by the post. Some followed his instructions and posted and talked about their staves, and others flamed him for his poor grammar, and frustrated that some were not following his 4-step process. He posted the following and was never heard from again. The thread quickly reached hundreds of pages of responses, and Karmerr quickly became a legend amongst Warlocks. He was even referenced by Blizzard in their sneak peek of the new arena system in the Burning Crusade expansion, which featured an orc warlock named Karmerr, decked out in the arena set and also using a wimpy level 5 staff. He also got his own card in the TCG where, upon entering play, the player may search their deck for a staff card to look over. How do you kill that which has no life? Next up, we have the grandfather of griefing, a player who had just one goal: to be the most hated and prolific ganker on the entire server. This is the story of Angwe, an orc rogue player on the Dethicus server who would head deep into Alliance territory into Menethil Harbor to kill low-level players, either in transit to other areas of the game or just there for questing. He would spend around 9 hours a day in Menethil Harbor, taking out any adventurer unfortunate enough to enter his sights. He quickly became an infamous legend, even spawning intricate guides on how to avoid his wrath, and naturally he was met with anger from his victims. At the time, you couldn't have both Alliance and Horde on the same server, so people would take to making alternate accounts to give Angwe a piece of their minds, and he himself made an alternate Alliance character on the same realm to goad reactions from his victims. He screenshotted some choice conversations and hosted them on his website as an archive to his in-game antics. He's since moved on with his life, but back then he was probably the most infamous rogue on not just his server, but possibly the entire game. Next up, we have the Undead Warrior, Noktyn. Noktyn isn't really known for an in-game event. Instead, he's known as being the first recorded recipient of the very first legendary in the game, the Talisman of the Binding Shard. This was a legendary amulet that dropped off of the Baron Gedon boss in the Molten Core. It had some resistances, strength, agility, stamina, and a Thorns effect, and he happened to be the lucky recipient in a March of 2005 raid by the Guild Nerfed, the same one that Indalamar was from, in fact. The only problem was that the item wasn't actually intended to be a drop in the game. Blizzard just forgot to remove it, so as soon as word spread, they removed the necklace from the loot tables, but they did let Noktyn keep his, making him the only person to ever have this legendary necklace.
Odd groups got left, even groups got right. That means 1, 3, 5, 7 left, 2, 4, 6, 8 right.
Anyone who's played World of Warcraft knows about the Onyxia wipe animation. The person you just heard was named Dives, a Tauren warrior and leader of the guild Wipe Club. On one fateful night, they decided to raid Onyxia's lair.
Whelps! Left side! Even side! Many whelps! Now handle it!
And Dives was the acting raid leader at the time, and as you just heard, things weren't going so well. They were having trouble killing the boss, and Dives wasn't too happy with the raid's performance. And what resulted was the birth of one of the biggest rage moments in the history of gaming.
That's a fucking 50 DKP minus! What the fuck was that shit?
Someone took audio of Dives' vexation, and they made it into an animation that was watched around the world, reaching over 10 million views on YouTube before it went Karen mode and it had to be re-uploaded. But it's gone down as one of the most popular World of Warcraft related videos ever, and it gave a taste to onlookers just how intense endgame raiding could be. Double Agent is a Pandaren shaman who did something pretty unique. Since the Mists of Pandaria expansion, he has obtained the maximum level without ever picking a faction or leaving the starting area for his race. The Pandaren have a unique introduction in World of Warcraft. You don't pick a faction upon creating a character. Instead, you first make a neutral, factionless character, and then you pick Alliance or Horde after a short series of quests. Normally, this process is done at around level 10 or so, but Double Agent found out that it was possible that you never even needed to pick a faction or even leave the starting area. He discovered that you could level to the max solely by gathering herbs and ore, even in low-level areas. The process is incredibly slow and tedious, but every expansion he makes it a point to reach this new max level by gathering copper and peace bloom, and at the same time, remaining neutral. Blizzard saw fit to reference him by putting an NPC named the Venerable Shaman in the Monk Order Hall in the Legion expansion, who patrols the area, occasionally picking up herbs and ore. Next up, we have Ian Bates, who's also known as the Red Shirt Guy. In BlizzCon 2010, he brought up some lore issues regarding the Wildhammer clan. This was during the Cataclysm beta, and one of the Wildhammers, Falstead, was replaced by Kurdran as the representative of the Council of the Three Hammers, even though Varian Rin decreed that Falstead was to be the representative. Game designer Chris Metzen incorrectly stated that Falstead was dead, to which he was quickly corrected by the red-shirted lore master.
No, he survived, and in fact, he was the leader of Airy Peak in Vanilla WoW through Wrath of the Lich King.
Hey, of course. Hey. Yeah, Alex, what's up with that?
Thanks for pointing that out. We're gonna get that fixed.
Thank you.
Bet.
And in response, they not only corrected their mistake, but as a nod to one fan's diligence, alongside Falstad is another NPC wearing a red tabard named the Wildhammer Fact Checker. And funny enough, if you take him out as Horde, he does indeed have a chance to drop a red shirt. Ever since the introduction of personal loot, ninja looting in World of Warcraft has, for the most part, been a thing of the past. But back during the early days, it was every other day it would seem that you would read stories of guilds having their loot stolen by what were called ninja looters. Quite possibly one of the most popular incidents was when the guild Nevermind killed Gar. The guild was celebrating a successful kill, and they were talking amongst themselves, trying to figure out who gets what.
Yeah, I want that ring. I do.
Alright. Who else wants it other than Roy?
During this time, the way that most guilds handled loot was through the Dragon Killing Point system, or DKP for short, where raiders would accumulate points through raiding and killing bosses and doing guild activities, and they would then spend these points on items that dropped, but Nevermind seemed to forego this system, instead opting for the free-for-all looting option and then rolling against each other for the boss's loot. And while this is much simpler than the DKP system, it of course leaves the guild open to thievery of any items that drop.
Kron, what are you doing?
What the fuck? Oh my god!
What the fuck?
Oh my god.
I'm going to kill myself right now. See ya!
They were left shocked by this turn of events. I mean, who could possibly imagine that out of 40 random strangers on the internet that someone might be untrustworthy? I, for one, am astonished. This happened all the time, but this particular incident was one of the most infamous, even spawning a parody video.
Alright. Okay. Below, we're waiting.
What's going on?
Oh my god!
Dude, you fuck!
Oh my god.
In the game, there exists a selection of items that are reserved for game masters, or GMs. They're primarily used for testing purposes, and they have these rather overpowered properties tied to them. One of these items was called Martin Fury, which, upon use, killed all enemies within a 30-yard radius. Here's the story of how somehow, someway, this fell into the hands of not a GM, but instead a normal, everyday player. Leeroy Speltz was a player in the guild, the Marvel family, on the US server, Vecnalash. Like many others at the time, someone had hacked their way into his account, and he had all of his items sold and characters deleted, and as part of standard procedure, he paged a GM to have his account restored so he could get back to playing the game. And while his request was granted, in the process of restoring his account, the GM had mistakenly sent him Martin Fury along with the rest of his items. Not being soulbound, Leeroy then sent this item over to his guildmate, Karate Chop, and he did what was possibly the dumbest and also most amazing thing that you could do. He used it. When Raid Night rolled around, they went on a Northrend World tour, going through the entirety of the newly released Ulduar raid, and also the Obsidian Sanctum and Eye of Eternity, and one-shotted all of the bosses there and made it rain loot. He was quite liberal with his use of this GM item, and the guild claimed several world firsts within the span of an hour. The entire server was alerted of world first achievements during this point, so people quickly figured out that something fishy was going on. The Marvel family wasn't a hardcore progression guild, so to see them rolling through everything in the matter of minutes was suspicious to say the least. So word eventually got out. Blizzard, probably in a moment of panic, decided to give a 24-hour ban to not only those involved in the raid, but everybody online in the guild during this time. The way they handled it was lambasted, and it was basically a giant catastrophe. But after the dust had settled, Karate Chop himself received a permanent ban, and the properties of GM items were changed so that something like this would never happen again. In the early days of World of Warcraft, everyone hated rogues. I should know, I was a rogue in vanilla, and I was a little shit. Now I'm just a big shit, but they had a very high damage output, and combining that with stealth made them forces to be reckoned with in PvP in particular. This is when PvP was in its infancy and there were a lot of balance issues. There were no diminishing returns, crowd control such as sheep could last for a straight minute, and with rogues having stuns, disorients, and more, it was commonplace to lose control of your character for 30 seconds or even minutes at a time while you're stuck in this seemingly infinite lock of stuns, disorients, and silences. This was highlighted no better than in the World of Roguecraft series of videos made by the player Mute. These were a series of videos showing just how strong rogues could be, giving the following two conditions. A, you were good at the game, and B, you also had your cooldowns. What would you say if I said that you could beat anyone in the game if you had just these two things? What would you say if I said you could do it naked with the level 1 white dagger? Well, these videos show just that. A naked rogue taking out not even just random players, but rank 14 Grand Marshals, including Maydai, who was a pretty popular PvP warrior at the time. Although there's some controversy about if it was actually him or if he sold his account or whatever. Regardless, the video showed just how good rogues could be given the right circumstances. It caused quite a lot of controversy at the time. People were outraged at how much control rogues had. Rogues responded saying that it's fine, they're cooldown dependent, and so on. It was an interesting time in the game where if you were good enough, and with the combination of some engineer gadgets, you would be able to pull off some pretty amazing things, and it was showcased very well by this popular PvP series.
I don't understand how, like, whenever you hit someone you hit them with a hamstring, you figure they're not going to be able to move. How does the hamstring last like 2 to 3 seconds, but whenever I get hit with a hamstring, it lasts like 2 to 3 minutes? I don't understand. Like, I don't even understand what it is that I'm fighting.
This is Tommy, and he's having some troubles with hamstring.
I can charge him, and as I am charging, I am slamming on my button that only hits hamstring, and I'll miss. As in, not like it swings and misses, I won't get a hamstring off. If my only intent on attacking him is to get a hamstring, how the fuck can I miss it? They just got the flag right underneath of us, and this guy is running 3 times faster than I am. How the fuck?
Back in the day, there was something called charge dodging. The warrior's charge ability wasn't the most reliable, and if you had good timing, and if you jumped as they were charging you, you would be out of range before they could actually reach and attack you. This was a PvP tactic used by higher level players to kite warriors more easily, and Tommy wasn't a very big fan of this technique, and he wasn't afraid to let his voice be heard.
I don't understand why it is that I get my ass stomped by these fucking coneheads.
His woes continued, and his indignation steadily rose. He refers to his opponents as coneheads, in reference to the look of the Alliance's PvP gear at the time. As his hamstrings failed, so too did his patience.
I just missed again! What the fuck?
His rage bar was full both in-game and in real life, and the only thing that got hamstrung that day apparently was his pride. No, this isn't Bohemian Rhapsody. This is Kungen, who is considered to be the best warrior tank in the entire game during the Vanilla and Burning Crusade era. He was the leader of the hardcore raiding guild, Nihilum. This is one of the best, if not the best, raiding guild of this era, claiming many world firsts throughout their time raiding. Later on, they would merge with another hardcore guild, Curse, to form the super guild Insidia, which would continue to get world first throughout the Wrath of the Lich King expansion. But something that really put him and his guild in the spotlight was the Serenite bomb glitch in the Wrath of the Lich King. Insidia was the first guild to kill the final boss of the Icecrown Citadel, the Lich King, on 25-man difficulty, but to everybody's shock shortly thereafter, the entirety of the raiding team received a 72-hour ban for exploiting. During the fight, the Lich King will destroy portions of the room and make it more difficult to navigate, and there is a bug where a consumable engineering item, a Serenite bomb, would respawn the platforms falling around the boss. And the ban became extremely controversial because these bombs were a part of everybody's DPS rotation, so Insidia claimed they didn't really know what they were doing or why it was happening. At this point, Blizzard watched every world first kill in small groups invisible as GMs, and Kungen later alluded that one of these people watching knew him from his time playing another MMO, EverQuest, and that this person was biased against him and was looking for an excuse to drop the banhammer. He also argued that it was normal mode and this hardcore raiding guild really had no reason to cheat on what was to them a trivial fight. Though it was quite a controversy at the time, people generally today see Blizzard in the wrong for failing to test their fight properly and handing out unwarranted bans. Next up, we have another guild leader. This one is more on the infamous side though. It's Shitsu of the guild 6 feet deep on Dragonmaw. Nearing the release of the Burning Crusade expansion, guilds were getting ready to take their adventure into the Outland. How would you level? Questing, maybe some instances here and there, or perhaps grinding. Well, if you're in 6 feet deep, you had less say in it than you initially thought. In fact, you had no say in it. A 2007 post by Shitsu laid down the rules. All members of the guild are expected to level to 70 as fast as humanly possible. If you want to experience the content, please do so after you have reached 70, or on another character. Here's how we'll be leveling. You will log into the game and look for an officer. One of the officers will assign you to a 5-man group. This 5-man group will run the appropriate instance level over and over again until someone has to leave, at which point an officer will assign a replacement. No questing, no BGs, no grinding solo, no trade skills, no farming, no checking out the new races. If you're online, you will be expected to participate in one of the groups running 5-man instances. The only exceptions to this will be if there are not enough people for you to group with, etc. and there will be plenty of off-hours downtime to goof off if you wish. But during prime time, I swear to Thrall, I will G-kick your ass if you're screwing around with stupid shit instead of participating in the leveling grind. This was posted to the forums where he was widely mocked, and in response to this, he said that 6 Feet Deep members are treated more like prized athletes than kids, and it's his job to provide clear direction and focus so that their team is all on the same page, working towards the same goal. It's called leadership. For this next one, I want you to think, out of anything that you can do in the game, what is the most offensive thing you could possibly do? Ninja looting, going dives mode, well, how about crashing a funeral? This next one isn't about a person, but rather a guild, Serenity Now, otherwise known as the Westboro Baptist Church of World of Warcraft, who in just one night became the most hated guild on their server, Illidan. Someone in a horde guild had sadly passed away, and her friends thought that it would be appropriate to hold an in-game memorial for her. They posted on the forums, picked a location, and gave a time when the memorial would be held, and this was all well and good, but there were 2 problems. 1, it was on a PvP server, and 2, it was the internet. An Alliance guild, Serenity Now, saw the post and decided that they would show up, but it wasn't in a show of support. The turnout was very big, and people lined up in front of a pond to pay respects to their fallen guildmate. While doing so, however, most of them were also dressed up in RP clothes, so they didn't have any weapons or armor equipped, because, come on, that would be inappropriate. While all of this was going down, Serenity Now were storming through Fellwood up to Winter Spring, and when they reached the memorial site, the most controversial large-scale PvP battle in online gaming history took place. Arrows went flying, blood was spilt, and jaws were dropped. Some were outraged, others were amused, some quit playing entirely out of disgust, and it goes down today as quite possibly one of the most controversial things to happen in the game. After nearly 20 years, there are those who have mastered PvP in vanilla World of Warcraft. But next, we're covering someone who did the same about 18 years ago, and his name was Vurtne. He released several PvP videos showcasing the potential of the mage class mainly in world skirmishes, often outnumbered, outleveled, or outgeared in some cases. And although he may have been outgeared, outnumbered, or outleveled, he wasn't outskilled. Mages were the cutting kings, and combined with their wide tool set of slows, roots, and throw in some engineer gadgets and special trinkets into the mix, you would see him taking out multiple people at once, and he made it seem effortless. Earlier we went over just how good rogues could be when they're in the right hands. Well, here he is taking out 2 of them at once. In fact, here's a clip of him taking out a warlock, a rogue, and a priest. He had both battlegrounds and world PvP in his videos, lots of Eastern Plaguelands, which was of course the level 60 zone, including the grinding spot Tier's Hand, which held a bunch of elite enemies. You weren't getting any farming done that day if you were Alliance, and Vurtne was there. Truly one of the best PvP mages at the time, if not the best, and his videos chronicle an interesting time in the game's PvP history. Next, we have Piccolina, another mage here, except this one isn't known for PvP, but instead for one of the biggest exploits in the game's history. Well, either exploit or clever use of game mechanics, that's up for debate. The old vanilla raid Nexramas was re-released in the Wrath of the Lich King expansion. It was the current raid tier, and guilds were racing through it, and while that was going on, this very clever mage managed to solo the entire military wing, which held 3 bosses: Instructor Resuvius, Gothic the Harvester, and the 4 Horsemen. One of the trash mobs had a buff called Bone Armor that absorbed a huge amount of damage, It also happened to be a magic effect, so mages could spell steal it for themselves, and these mobs would continuously cast it, so you would have an infinite supply of absorbs as long as you didn't kill them. So that's the defense covered, but what about the offense? If you're solo, it would just take too long to kill the bosses, and they would enrage, making the bone armor worthless. But there happened to be a talent that mages had in their arcane tree called Incanter's Absorption, where if you have all 3 ranks of this, whenever you absorbed a damage, your spell damage was increased by 15% for 10 seconds, which also stacked infinitely. So combining this with the infinite bone armor made you into a one-man wrecking crew, and made it quite easy, in fact, to solo the military wing. And the only reason that you couldn't solo the other wings was because the bone armor mobs despawned when you left the military quarter. Blizzard got really salty and gave Piccolina a 24-hour ban. They took away all of her loot, and the bone armor spell was changed to where it was no longer stealable to stop every other mage playing the game from emulating her. But it still goes down today as one of the biggest exploits / clever use of game mechanics in the game's history. Next, we have an OG of PvP, Swifty. Anyone who played vanilla back in the day may have heard of the Incredible Warrior trick series, where he would showcase, well, incredible warrior tricks. He had a macro that allowed you to charge in combat, something that was impossible at the time. He popularized the use of the Skull of Impending Doom, which was an item that dealt damage to the user and gave you a movement speed boost, one of the ways to counter the many forms of crowd control in the game. And his videos focused more on 1v1 situations against each class in the game, against players who were considered to be the best on his server at the time. And you of course had the usual warrior, wrecking ball, and battlegrounds and whatnot. He released several popular videos throughout the entirety of the game, and also becoming something of a personality for it. And along with many other PvPers, he was reincarnated in-game as a commander in the Ashran PvP zone in the Warlords of Draenor expansion. You may have heard about the Iron Man challenge, where you have to level to the max using all white or gray gear, and no money from your main, no grouping, and other crazy restrictions. Well, Gutrot was a troll warrior that took it just a little bit further. Starting in July of 2006, over 15 months, he leveled to the max at the time, 70, using no weapons nor armor at all. Instead, he simply punched his way all the way from 1 to 70 with only rings, trinkets, a necklace, and a non-weapon offhand to aid him. So he was the Iron Man before the Iron Man challenge even existed, although the challenge does disqualify you if you died, which I'm sure happened quite often with him. Regardless, it took him a whopping 32 days of in-game time to reach the max level, and along the way he updated curious onlookers, and when he turned in the final quest, several hundred people were present, and he threw a party in the low-level troll area, Senjin Village. The turnout was so big that it caused the server to go down a couple of times, and in celebration they launched a raid on Stormwind City with an army of naked low-level trolls. Once the Wrath of the Lich King expansion rolled around, he did the same throughout Northrend, all the way to 80, and then again to 85 with Cataclysm, and it seemed like he threw in the towel after that. Like many others, he quit during the stupid Panda expansion, and the highest he reached was 87, where his character disappeared, either deleted or banned. Windfury in original vanilla was pretty different. It had a chance to give you an extra attack, as it does now, but from these extra attacks, you could proc even more extra attacks, repeating infinitely. It was a very RNG heavy thing, and one player, Unbreakable, showed just how crazy it could be. This is the Shaman on our list of PvPers. He held the legendary mace, Sulphurus, the Hand of Ragnaros, and combined with Windfury, he became a force to be reckoned with. If you played back then, you're probably familiar with the countless threads of calling nerfs for this spell and shamans in general, and Unbreakable, in my opinion, was probably one of the main sources for them for this PvP video, where he's just in a lot of these clips using one ability and auto-attacking and just wiping people off the face of the planet. It was a bit of a slot machine type of playstyle, but when things lined up, it was pretty deadly. Earlier, we talked about the World of Roguecraft series with Mute, and how he was able to take down rank 14 players naked. The next person on our list, Grim, showed the rogue's full potential with actual gear equipped, so you can imagine the havoc that he wreaked. He He was an undead rogue who had his time during vanilla, like many others I've listed, and per vanilla standard he showed off some good old-fashioned world PvP, and he released 2 videos, Total Annihilation and Path of Blood, where he showed off the combat and assassination specializations, and he also had some subtlety gameplay in there as well, and he would be responsible for many people making rogues after witnessing how powerful they could be with endgame gear, as he took out multiple people within just a couple of stuns. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of rogue hate back in the day. As someone who played one back then, I personally saw nothing wrong with it. No, nothing at all. Everyone remembers the Alamo. Earlier we mentioned Kralnor and his infatuation with staves. Alamo was the Kralnor of druids. In 2005, he posted a highly detailed and intricate step-by-step guide to the inner workings of the druid class, titled Alamo Teaches You to Play Druid. The thread explained how some druids can tank in bear form, or DPS in cat form, and coined the phrase, "Cat druid is for fight." The post was riddled with poor grammar and a plethora of Microsoft Paint images to accompany it, and similar to Kralnor's post, it quickly caught on and became quite popular, and he continued them throughout the Cataclysm expansion to make sure that every druid knew how to properly play their class. These guides were popular enough that Blizzard gave him his own card in the trading card game, like others I've mentioned, and he also made an appearance in the April 2009 joke about the dance battle system, where he was part of the druid team. So far we've covered a couple of people who leveled to the max in pretty unconventional ways. We had Double Agent with his herb and ore gathering, Gutrot with his fisticuffs technique. Next up though, we have Nur the Pacifist, who, upon character creation, left his starting zone with gear that he never used. Instead, he chose to level up without killing anything, otherwise known as the pacifist approach. If you think about it, our characters are pretty much psychotic murderers. We've killed countless people for sport or just a few silver, but Nur took a different approach, instead avoiding any quests that required you to kill anything, and instead opted for the ones where you simply had to deliver something from one NPC to another, or ones that required you to just pick up stuff, cooking dailies, things of that nature. It took him 2 years, but he reached the current max at the time, which was 80, without killing a single enemy, which was even more impressive because at the time, gathering nodes didn't even give you XP. Many others would follow suit to emulate his feat, but Nur the Pacifist was the first player to reach the max at the time with their hands clean. Nerdgasm. The thrill or excitement felt in response to something relating to a subject in which a person has an obsessive interest.
Oh, dude, 4 strength, 4 stam, leather belt. Ah! Level 18?
The voice you just heard was that of Joe. That's it, just Joe. Just another one of the millions of players adventuring in the world of Azeroth. In his leveling, he apparently happened upon a belt, one with 4 strength and 4 stamina nonetheless, and uttered the nerdgasm heard around the world.
Okay.
Either that or he was just having a stroke. What kind of stroke is up for you to decide. And when I said around the world, I meant that literally because, unlucky for Joe, someone outside of his group of friends not only was listening, but also recording.
Strength 4 stam, leather belt.
What the hell?
The video compiler was a YouTube channel that specialized in what he called ventrilo harassment, where he would enter other people's servers and harass them in some way, either by playing loud, obnoxious sound effects, movie clips, songs, or by recording their own voices and playing it back to them. He'd record their reactions and upload them to YouTube for all to see, and Joe just happened to be one of his many victims.
4 strength, 4 stam, leather belt.
Joe, is that you and the other one?
What? No.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, 4 strength,
No,
4
it's
stam,
not.
leather belt.
Yeah, dude.
Alright, obviously it's not.
Oh, Oh, dude, 4 strength, 4 stam, leather belt.
That's definitely Joe.
Oh, dude,
No, it's not. He's been coming in there doing it. What the hell?
It sounds just like Joe.
It is.
Oh, dude, 4 strength, 4
No, it's
stam.
not!
His nerdgasm spawned a whole series of videos, as the video compiler and his fans would replay it to other random ventrilos to get a reaction out of people.
No, Kaiser Elements. Those are the ones that were on the Deshis, dude. If you get the Deshis,
Oh,
those
dude,
kids
4
are fucking
strength,
right
4
as hell.
stam, leather
Yeah.
belt. Holy cow. Level 18?
You're so stupid.
Next up, we don't have a player, but instead a guild, the Goon Squad. Not really known for being one of the top guilds, but rather one of the top troublemaking guilds. No funeral crashing this time, but some of their work includes cutting Jaina Proudmoore to Orgrimmar to kill unsuspecting city dwellers, forming a raid of zombies during the Wrath launch event to infect and kill unsuspecting city dwellers, and tricking Alliance players into attacking an immune player and gathering them up so they can all revive at once to kill unsuspecting city dwellers. Well, at least this time they're of the opposite faction. Their crowning achievement, however, came during the Wrath of the Lich King expansion in the new PvP zone, Winter Grasp. One side had to defend a fortress from the other, fending off players, siege tanks, demolishers, and planes? Well, that's what the box art said, but I guess that never made it in. The goal of the attacking team was to break through these layers of walls using these siege tanks, or if you were an engineer, grenades, which also did normal damage like any other grenade, but in addition siege damage specifically for this event. In preparation for the event to begin, the Goon Squad perched themselves upon the final door leading to victory of the zone, all having a large supply of these grenades, and as soon as it started they parachuted down, and in just 1 minute they destroyed the last gate to win the game in record time. A stunned Alliance returned to their keep, only to find out that they've been locked out and surrounded by elite Horde guards, which quickly slaughtered them if they drew too close. Immediately after, Blizzard released a hotfix that made the grenades pretty much useless in the PvP zone.
Hi, this is Gurkhok from Elitist Jerks. This is a narrated video of a Zulaman speedrun that'll show you how my group has successfully approached the zone.
Some of you may recognize this voice. That's right, that's the voice of Ian Hazakostas, who's the current game director of World of Warcraft. This was back during the Burning Crusade expansion before he was affiliated with Blizzard. He was the leader of the Elitist Jerks Guild, which was one of the most influential guilds at the time. In 2008, before Wrath's launch, he joined Blizzard as a raid and dungeon designer, and 7 years later he moved up to assistant game director, and finally in 2016, the game director for World of Warcraft, a position he still holds to this day. In this video, however, he's just another player making a guide on how to successfully complete the bear run in the Zulaman raid in the Burning Crusade. This guide proved useful to many players, showing different shortcuts and mob skips and boss strategies to speed up the run as fast as possible. As someone pointed out in the comments of the video, you can maybe think of this as a foreshadowing to the Mythic Plus system, which saw its introduction in Legion. He was also active in Vanilla World of Warcraft though. In fact, he was the one who did the math and concluded that the Cthulhu fight from Vanilla AQ40 to be mathematically impossible to win, assuming the absolutely best geared roster and 40 players making 0 mistakes. Frustrated, a number of these hardcore raiding guilds called out Blizzard and accused them of releasing intentionally overtuned content in order to stall for their next raid, Mixramis. Some were constructive, like Ian's post, and provided the numbers, and others went with a slightly more dramatic approach. This is a screen cap of an IRC chat from a member of Death and Taxes, which was another top rating guild having difficulty killing Cthulhu. Also present in the chat is Führer, the alias for Alex Afrasiabi, former world designer of World of Warcraft. There's quite a history with him as well, having led the EverQuest guild, the Fires of Heaven, which was considered by many to be the most dominating guild in the game. When he was still playing EverQuest in 2003, he made a profanity-laced rant about a new raid called the Plains of Time. It saw a shaky release, so he took to the forums to give the developers an ultimatum. You have 14 days. If after that, the Plane of Time is not properly tuned, I am deleting my characters and canceling all of my accounts. The rest of my guild will follow suit, as well as several other guilds and people that play EverQuest. I did not work my ass off, jumping through your idiotic hoops with my friends and guildmates so I could go to a zone where groups of 18 could enjoy the content. Even if, past these initial moronic events, I can finally get my entire guild to raid with me, frig you guys. Seriously. Frig you to heck. He's pretty mad, to say the least, and the rest of the post was more of the same. So now, with Afrasiabi now employed at Blizzard, she, the leader of Death and Taxes, made a pseudo-parody post using the same format of Afrasiabi's 2003 EverQuest thread, instead this time giving Blizzard 14 days to properly tune Cthulhu, or else he and his guild will quit to switch to professional solitaire. Back to the IRC chat, the guild questioned the professionalism and ethic of Blizzard releasing a seemingly broken encounter, and they expressed frustration with their inability to overcome the unfair challenges. And after carefully pondering their argument that the content may be a bit overtuned, Afrasiabi looked back to the time when he was the player. The frustrated guild leader posed with an unbeatable challenge, and he realized that he and she weren't all that different. And with great care and deliberation, he sincerely took on the criticism and replied, "I think you're just being okay." That's pretty impressive, actually. With how filtered everything is these days, to what lengths do you have to go to for an employee of a AAA video game to say that you have Down syndrome? How much would you have to mess with someone to completely send them off the deep end to the point to where they publicly lash out at their own community base? Well, the world may never know. I'm surprised you can say that with Blizzard's. Okay, I think you can read the rest of that for yourself. The two continued their constructive discussion of old gods and cocks. It didn't really go that far, and incidentally, Cthulhu did end up getting a nerf shortly after, and guilds finally started to beat him. But more importantly than that, we were left with one of the most dramatic public arguments between a Blizzard employee and members of the community in the company's history.
Stack up for the meteor. In.
Stack now. Tight, I'm not moving anymore.
Zeliak is...
Zeliak is in the wrong spot.
Who's on Zeliak? Feeny, move it. Yo, you're a fucking loser. Taunt Zeliak and run it away. Run Zeliak away.
Oh, fuck. Was that the wrong corner?
Did you just do that?
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, fuck, I had the wrong corner.
Between private servers and official re-releases, Vanilla World of Warcraft has to be one of the most relaunched or remixed games of all time. And in 2023, Blizzard would launch an official hardcore server, the major difference being as simple as it is daunting. If you die once, that's it. No corpse walk, no spirit res, whether it be from overconfidence, a duel to the death, or bullshit disconnects. Oh shit! Oh my god. Oh, don't you dare, dude. Come on. I'm not doing this quest anymore. I'd like to thank you guys for checking out my stream tonight. I love this game. It's my favorite. I'm actually going to take a 2-year break. If you die, every item and all the gold on that character can be considered gone forever, even if it's at the hands not from a mob or an internet connection from 2004, but rather a supposed ally. Even if you're level 60, and even if you're in the final raid tier for all of vanilla. These official servers were inspired by the community with a self-imposed rule set and an add-on to moderate them, and in July of 2023, the Guild Hardcore Elite were making their first attempt at the final boss of the Death Knight wing, the Four Horsemen. This fight would prove to be one of the most intimidating, as one screw-up by a single person could potentially wipe the raid. It's a 4-boss fight where each horseman periodically applies a unique AoE dot that stacks onto everybody within 40 yards, and at a certain point it becomes unhealable. So the strategy to beat them is for the entire raid, tanks, healers, and DPS, is to play merry-go-round, moving from one boss to another before their stacks get too high. It requires a lot of coordination. Some believe it to be the most complex fight in all of vanilla, and also execution, and in general it's extremely unforgiving for mistakes, especially if a tank dies, as the boss will then run around the room and stacking this dot onto everyone, which renews debuffs that are about to expire, and screwing up the entire rotation in the process. And with death now being permanent, the stakes were high to say the least. Unfortunately for Hardcore Elite, they had an extra secret debuff, a hidden affix in the form of a player with less than pure intentions. And so begins the story of Tiny Violin, a player spurned, according to him, by being cheated out of Scarab Lord and Atish by a corrupt loot council. This, along with, as he claims, the guild cheating the rule set of the self-imposed challenge, would be the reason for what he called Judgment Day. He had been with the guild for a year at this point, and during that fateful raid night, as they attempted their pull, Tiny Violin, who was tanking at the time, intentionally pulled one of the horsemen into the wrong corner, throwing the entire encounter into disarray and killing 36 people in the process.
Oh, fuck, was that the wrong corner?
Did you just do that?
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, fuck, I had the wrong corner.
As this wasn't controversial enough, this event would start another controversy of its own within the community, as the deaths were shortly appealed and petitioned to be reset due to griefing. Those killed had their characters reinstated to them, and the community would be split on this decision, with some supporting it in order to dissuade future griefing, and others disagreeing as it bended the rule set of death is death, period. But little did they know, this would not be the last that they had seen of Tiny Violin. Months later, he had secretly gotten into the guild under another name. They were getting ready to pull the final boss of the Encourage raid, Cthulhu, who has a mechanic where he will I-beam, which changes to other nearby players and increasing in damage. This mechanic begins immediately, so pulling has to be done in a very careful way, with the tank charging alone to take the first beam, and then the raid following a safe distance behind. While going over strategy, he pulled in without warning, instantly killing 13 people in the process.
Again, do not run in with me.
Wait,
oh my God.
Oh my Patrick, God. Patrick, everyone.
What?
Oh my God.
Griefer.
And so, a true anime villain was born. He began to play the game in a very different way, by multi-boxing 16 accounts and camping them throughout the world at various spots to dispel unsuspecting raiders of their buffs. He would even go as far to claim that he had been in contact with a Blizzard developer, and he was one of the reasons that Blizzard released the Chronoboon item in 2019 Classic, which allowed players to safely store their buffs. Reaction to his story are extremely polarized. Some are angry, some are amused, some look at him as a hero, others as a villain. But whatever the case, he certainly earned the title of one of the more infamous players of recent date.
Wait, Patrick, everyone.
What?
Oh my God.
I'd like to welcome you to my video on how I make money in SMCath. It's a 10-minute run. This is basically what I've been doing for a while. It's a power level where I basically get all the good loot and they get all the great experience. What's happening here?
On a more wholesome note, when World of Warcraft was released in 2004, social media was still in its infancy, and therefore so too were its content creators. And even still, those who did exist were more PvP-centric, uploading their compilations to the popular website Warcraft Movies. When YouTube launched in 2007, along with the game's first expansion, The Burning Crusade, one of the very first content creators would make their debut, a player by the name of WoW Hobbs, who didn't showcase his prowess in PvP, but instead in power leveling. The Hobbs way of pulling, as he called it, would involve gathering up all of the mobs inside of a low-level dungeon and AoEing them all down at once in order to power level. His videos were guide-based, sharing his experience, tips, and tricks, and were characterized by his humor, enthusiasm, and deep knowledge of the game, quickly garnering him a dedicated following and earning him the title of one of the very first World of Warcraft content creators. He would show, at the time, a unique and unconventional way of playing the game by soloing through these low-level dungeons and providing quick XP for the levelers in his party, and also a lucrative way to farm gold. These videos would stand out in a sea of PvP compilations that dominated the scene and pioneered an entire genre of entertainment. The online personality, where he would also provide class guides, parodies, and updates on the latest developments within the World of Warcraft universe. His videos appealed to a wide audience, from hardcore players seeking advanced strategies to casual fans looking for entertainment and guidance. Over the years, Hobbs has established himself as one of the more respected and beloved figures within the World of Warcraft community. While the landscape of online gaming and content creation has evolved since his debut, his influence and impact within the World of Warcraft community remains significant to this day, where he continues to produce content, engage with his audience, and contribute to the vibrant gaming community that he helped shape over the years. The year is 2008. The Wrath of the Lich King expansion is brand new, and World of Warcraft is at the height of its popularity. However, with great power comes great responsibility, as with success comes with the opportunity for theft, robbery, and pilferage. As the game grew in popularity, so too did the ways in which players' accounts were stolen. I was just minding my own business, doing a little research online, and somehow my account got hacked. That's the power that this game had. In the mid-2000s, people were after your credit card number, banking information, social security number, and your World of Warcraft account.
The fuck? Fuck! What the fuck? What the fuck?
Have you ever been so pissed off that you unlocked your potential as a death metal singer? What you just heard was the death knell of one of the millions of victims of account theft. Or so he thought. Unbeknownst to him, he was merely the victim, instead a prank by his friends who logged into his account and changed his password to give them the impression that he was one of the many affected by a recent rash of compromised accounts. It quickly spread across the internet and has become one of the more popular World of Warcraft related videos to this day.
Oh shit, it's not even fucking working now! Fuck! Fuck!
What do you do in your years of just relax or?
Yeah, you know, I'll spend time with my daughters, you know, wife and daughters, go to Disney, do some fishing, grilling, watching American football, you know, drinking, playing World of Warcraft. That's one of my...
Corpse Grinder. No, that's not a character name. Rather, it's a death metal singer, George Fisher, of the band Cannibal Corpse. As it turns out, death metal singers were no more immune to the addiction sweeping the world as any other, and when he wasn't busy singing about cutting off people's heads, he was actually doing it in World of Warcraft, a hobby, as it turns out, he's quite passionate for.
Hey man, I'll talk about Warcraft all fucking night, dude. I have 4 accounts, it ain't like I don't play. I have a 70 Hunter, a 70 Rogue, a 70 fucking Warrior, Prot Warrior, because there ain't no other way to be. And what other 70 I got? Oh, Priest, Undead.
One wouldn't really think that death metal and MMORPGs really have an intersection, so many were surprised to learn that George was an avid fan of Blizzard's 2004 hit, as he revealed in a 2007 heavy metal interview, and he had a lot to say about his time in Azeroth.
Stop going to the fucking elemental plateau ganking people! I'm trying to get motes of air! Nobody else in the band plays Warcraft because we probably will never do an album. You know, I swear, and I wouldn't do this, but there are times when I get ganked where somebody fucking kills my guy, and I'm like, if I could just reach through the computer, I would punch that motherfucker's lights out right now.
The interview was quickly shared across social media, and it really showed that all walks of life played the game, from 10-year-olds to soccer moms to death metal singers. It hooked everyone, it seemed.
You know what kills me the most is all these fucking hunter elves you see, and they're all like Legolas, but it's all spelled wrong. Fuck off! That's fucking Lord of the Rings!
He would even perform live at BlizzCon in 2011, and he still plays to this day, as far as everyone knows, but due to the demands of his band and his personal life, he can't get as much game time in as he'd like to. Today, when he isn't performing, he's honing his proficiency in claw machines and donating the prizes to charities around the world.
If I don't have a connection on tour, I get really pissed off. I get fucking really mad, man. I'm serious. There's a lot to do, man. There's motherfuckers to kill, you know. I don't like playing PvP a lot, but you know.
What is the point of a video game? You start from square one and slowly unravel the story, progressing your character along the way, as well as your skill, and watching an ending credits roll. It's enough to satisfy most, but for some, the first thing that they do after watching the credits is to go again, but this time, a little faster. As social media has flourished over the years, so too has the speedrunning community. Groups of people gathered around thousands of different games with one simple goal: beat it as fast as possible. Still, long before this ideal environment was created, there's a man who did the unthinkable. Not only did he level from 1 to 60 in vanilla World of Warcraft, he did it faster than anyone else on the planet, several times. And so begins the story of Joanna. His speedrunning escapades started long before World of Warcraft, however, as far back as 7 years old in 1987, and speedrunning Quake in the 90s, and even publishing the first ever recorded Castlevania 4 speedrun in 1999. As far as World of Warcraft is concerned, his story begins in its infancy in vanilla, and quickly gaining recognition for his speedrunning strategies and completing the leveling process in record time. His detailed guides and videos on efficient leveling routes and tactics attracted a large following of players eager to optimize their own leveling experiences. Today, I think it's harder to appreciate just how helpful this was, as questing and leveling have become much more understood and less intimidating. But in the culture of the early MMOs, leveling to the max, period, regardless of the speed, was a pretty daunting task, so his guides were a lifesaver for those who ran into trouble. One of his most notable achievements came in 2006, when he set the world record for the fastest time to reach level 60. This accomplishment solidified his reputation as one of the most skilled and dedicated players within the community. Throughout the years, he continued to create content focused on World of Warcraft, including leveling guides, strategy videos, and gameplay commentary, and his dedication to the game and his willingness to share his knowledge with others earned him a loyal fan base and recognition for one of the more iconic players to have played the game, and pioneering what was then a unique and difficult form of challenge. He continued to participate in various WoW events and competitions, and remained an active member within the community until, due to a heart condition, he sadly passed away in April of 2024, leaving in his wake a unique legacy and memories that many today look back to fondly. When thinking of personalities within the World of Warcraft community, it's hard to not immediately think of Reckful. Reckful began playing World of Warcraft in its early years, but his history with MMOs first began in Asheron's Call, where he quickly became dominant in the game's PvP system. And when World of Warcraft released in 2004, he would join the millions of others in exploring the world of Azeroth. And he hated it. In fact, he never made it past level 30, as he found the questing to be too boring to be bothered with. And it wasn't until the game's first expansion, the Burning Crusade, with the release of the competitive arena system, that he would become engulfed into the addiction sweeping the world, having been given an account by his friend, which held a level 70 rogue, named Reckful. Similarly to Asheron's Call, he quickly rose to prominence as one of the game's top PvPers, specializing in the rogue class in particular, and achieving high rankings in PvP, not just in the Burning Crusade, but throughout all of the game's history. On a surface level, competitive PvP in World of Warcraft seems to be quite a simple thing. You kill the enemy players while keeping your allies alive, but as you climb rank, you realize just how much depth there is between crowd control, communication, cooldown management, target switching, and so on. Only those with the ability to make quick decisions and with a deep knowledge and understanding of every single matchup were the ones to find success, and Reckful was successful, to say the least. He first uploaded to the popular Warcraft movies PvP Hub, and later YouTube, his videos quickly garnering millions upon millions of views from the community. Along with friends, he would compete in esports tournaments surrounding the game, teaming up with other similarly extremely skilled players, and even became the first player ever to hit 3,000 rating in the game's arena mode. And while many would initially be drawn to him for his skill in PvP, they would stay for his entertaining personality and insightful commentary. He would quite frequently offer a view into his personal life with his viewers, who soon began to learn more about the man behind the rogue, and it would be inevitable that he would venture beyond the confines of the game and forging his path into the broader realm of content creation. His content wasn't just about gameplay, it was of entertainment, filled with laughter, drama, and heartfelt moments. From epic arena matches to unfortunate mishaps, his streams were a roller coaster ride of highs and lows, and turning into something of a gathering where gamers from all walks of life came together to share their passion for this virtual realm, and quickly making him one of the first big streamers on Twitch. Amidst these chaotic adventures, he embarked on a quest for balance in his personal life and shared struggles with mental health issues such as anxiety and depression, and used his platform to shed light on the importance of mental wellness. Tragically, in July of 2020, Reckful would lose his battle against depression, forever leaving a void not just within the World of Warcraft community, but also the content creation industry and gaming sphere at large. Players would pay an in-game tribute to him in the Stormwind Cathedral, where, in a rare moment, both the Horde and Alliance agreed to peace in mutual respect and tribute to one of the most iconic and impactful players of the game. His death had a profound impact on his fans and the online community, and sparked discussions about mental health awareness and support within the gaming and streaming industry. And he's remembered today for not just his PvP prowess, but also his competitive nature and the impact he left on the game, its players, and the community who watched him. Famous, infamous, wholesome, controversial, whatever the case may be, World of Warcraft's intriguing legacy isn't defined by its lore, world, or even its gameplay as much as it is by the people who played it. The game is nothing without its players, and behind each avatar is a real person with thoughts, emotions, a story, and an impact. And each of them, in this episode, and those prior and future, play a crucial role on just why it became one of the most influential games in history, as it showcased the possibilities of a world within a world and highlighted how it served as a medium to bring people together. Though some may be gone, let them never be forgotten, and let their legacies be celebrated for the impact that they had on the game, its players, and the members of the communities they helped inspire and grow.
Farewell for now, mortals. We hope you enjoyed today's video. See you again soon.